My conversation with Angara co-founders Aditi and Ankur Daga. Ankur and Aditi, I want to sort of ask you about this. Over the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen an explosion in lab-grown diamond sales. And I think it started with a 2018 FTC ruling, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so the FTC ruling essentially said a lab-grown diamond is a diamond because it is chemically, physically, optically the same. And all of a sudden, that lent so much credibility to lab-grown.
Prior to that, how were they allowed to be marketed? What does this FTC ruling mean?
So prior to that, they were really looked at as synthetics, which is, a fake equivalent, almost
Right.
like a CZ or even moissanite. And all of a sudden, after the ruling, they became at the same level as natural.
Does that mean that companies can now call them diamonds? Is that fair to say?
As long as they use created or lab in front of them.
Yes, they have to?
Yes, correct.
This is all about transparency to the customer, making sure that you're really clear about, is it lab created? Is it natural? I think the difference is is it a quote unquote fake diamond? No, it's not. It's a real diamond that was created in a lab.
This episode is actually coming up. It'll come out close to Valentine's Day. And I'm curious, obviously, I'm guessing some listeners may be planning on proposing to someone. Diamonds are top of mind. I want to get your takes. Do you think it's cool to propose to someone and not let them know the diamond is lab grown? Just be like, here's a diamond ring? Or is that a faux pas?
So I think transparency, as Beth was just talking about, is critical. And, honestly, she's going to find out anyways. You might as well be upfront. So, yeah.
Why do you think she's going to find out anyways?
I think, if you're giving a 3-carat stone and people are reading about lab grown in newspapers, they can test it. And you don't want your relationship to go under scrutiny at that point, certainly.
Yeah, you definitely want to start your relationship with trust and confidence. And, I will say many women out there are excited to receive lab diamonds.
Totally.
And by the way, women are driving the engagement process much of the time in these days. So it's a great for both, I would say.
Yeah, I want to be clear. This was not me saying that buying lab grown is bad. It's just whether it's something you have to disclose just like businesses do.
It happens all the time. A lot
Really?
of people do not disclose, yeah. And then people find out a little bit later. And we've had the situation where we saw in, I think, Madison Square Garden, there was somebody with a diamond tester walking around and tested somebody's ring. And she found out at that time that it was a lab grown and she walked out. So
she walked out?
She walked out of the stadium, yeah.
Girl.
Yeah.
To my husband, I would be fine if you wanted to buy me some lab grown stones. I'm here for it. But I am curious whether the availability of lab-grown stones has changed consumer behavior. And by that, I mean, lab-grown stones are generally a lot cheaper. Beth, I'll start with you. Can you tell me sort of why they've gotten cheaper and what that sort of price trajectory looked like over the past couple of years?
We were one of the first to sell lab-created diamonds. We started selling them in 2012. And at that point, even getting a 1 carat was somewhat unusual. So the inventory was much more constrained. Recently, we've had more producers out there. So as you see more volume, the price has come down a bit. I will say that at this point in time, customers are very aware of the category. And I think awareness has really grown, whereas, in 2018, awareness was lower than where we are today. What we see is that you have consumers that are drawn towards lab, you have other consumers that are drawn towards natural. And so our approach has always been to offer a broad choice and let the consumer decide. But I would say at this point, we have a really nice inventory. You're able to buy a really a much bigger diamond with the same budget, and customers do shop with a budget in this category. So it's really about what appeals to the customer. And we do see a lot of customers that really love lab created the same way we also see natural.
But I think the consumption for lab grown has really taken off because of the price differential. So, to your question, back in 2018, 2% of center stones were lab grown, and there were roughly 10 to 20% discount to natural.
So that wasn't a high discount, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're looking at 75 to 90% less than the natural mined equivalent. So you can get a 2-carat diamond engagement ring lab grown for $2,500. You can get the same thing for $25,000 if it's natural. That really moves the needle.
And also, I think acceptance also has increased. I think 40% or almost 50% of Gen Z recognizes that a lab-grown diamond is real, versus 88% of baby boomers view it as artificial.
That's actually such a stark difference. And before we get to sort of the change in marketing or the change in way we talk about it between generations, just to be clear, why has the supply grown so much? Are more corporations buying sort of machines to make lab-grown diamonds? Tell me about that ecosystem.
Well, I think as suppliers saw demand increasing, they bought the machines and started producing it more. So some of it was just chasing the demand and just seeing the adoption that you do have this Gen Z millennial audience that's really receptive in a way that previous generations weren't. And I think a lot of suppliers, wanted to capitalize on that interest.
And Ankur and Aditi, how has this affected the price of natural diamonds?
So from, let's say, April 2022 to now, we've seen natural diamonds drop anywhere from 35 to 40% in value, which obviously is tremendous. But historically,
April 2022 was the peak, though.
Correct.
In fairness.
Correct.
So I'm not sure that's the best comparison point. We saw a massive demand in 21 across the industry, and that drove prices up.
Yeah. Even if you look at pre-pandemic, prices are still down, where a lot of commodities are up. And I think part of the reason people used to buy diamonds, there's two fundamental reasons. One is financial flex. So you could show off that you're wearing a 2-carat or 3-carat ring, and that has certain connotations. I think that has largely gone away because you could buy the same thing as lab grown for $2,500 now. And then the second reason was really as an inflation hedge or as an investment.
So it'd be like buying bars of gold, if that, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Precisely. And, gold is a good analogy. Gold has been an inflation hedge, and that has largely worked out. For the last year and a half, that has not worked out on the diamond side. So a lot of consumers, primarily social media, press, are seeing that it is no longer a great investment, and thus they're migrating to either lab or to color.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just say, I actually don't believe U.S. consumers buy diamonds for an investment. And frankly, if you bought a natural diamond, resale values are definitely different than what you pay face value at. What we see in the American consumer is people buy as a symbol. It's love, it's commitment, it has meaning to the customer, it has a lot of emotional value and resonance. And so that to me is different than buying for an investment, which I don't think that's how young couples are thinking about commemorating their relationship.
Interesting.
It's a market driven by supply and demand, and that supply and demand is really global. So even if the US consumer is not looking at it as an asset, certainly consumers in China and India are, and that affects pricing everywhere.
I want to talk a little bit about the way in which these diamonds are marketed. So, Beth, I think you mentioned a sort of pretty interesting stat when it comes to the appeal of lab-grown diamonds to Gen Z. Why is that? What kind of language or what are the aspects of it that have really resonated with that demographic?
Well, the way we talk about it, lab diamonds are affordable, they're beautiful, and they're mining free, because you don't have to worry about some of the social issues surrounding the diamond mining industry. I think a lot of customers get peace of mind in that way. We're able to offer 100% renewable in terms of lab created. So it's using 100% renewable energy across the grow process as well as cut and polish. That type of sustainability, I think, is really attractive to a Gen Z audience where that matters to them.
That makes a lot of sense. I want to ask you, Ankur and Aditi, about how this has affected sort of the jewelry industry. When you think about natural grown diamonds, there are a few big suppliers. There's De Beers and there's a bunch of smaller jewelry businesses. But, how has this affected like the Tiffany's or the Cartiers or the Bulgaris of the world?
So I think the branded jewelers, let's say Cartier, Tiffany, Bulgari, are doing better than ever. Revenue is way up. LVMH sales reports where I think jewelry as a category was up 28% in 2023. Part of the reason is a lot of Bulgari pieces, for example, you could tell from 20 feet away that that's a Bulgari serpentine necklace. And that has a signifier value because you know exactly what you're looking at. So I think over time, the iconic pieces or the pieces that you can easily tell will continue to appreciate, and people will gravitate towards that.
So you're basically saying that like a brand name is everything, right? In the same way that Chanel can increase its prices by, 15, 16%, people will still buy them. Is that fair?
It will continue to matter more and more.
This is a category where brands matter, where trust matters a lot for the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a lot of experience with diamonds. And so they want to make sure that they're buying from someone that they can trust. And, obviously, this is all about expressing their own individuality, and brands do a good job of that.
Well, Beth, do you see more consumers, just given the lower price of lab-grown diamonds, buying more diamond jewelry?
We do see diamond jewelry being very on trend right now, that a lot of customers, love wearing diamond tennis bracelets, for example. Some really nice diamond studs, which are always, I would say, fashionable for our consumers. And we also see a lot of customers that really like more personalization. So things like our zodiac pendants are really popular. It's really about how do you express who you are as a person. And I think wearing big diamonds are very on trend right now.
For a long time, people saved up forever to buy this one engagement ring, and that was like the diamond that you have. And now it seems like there are more options for people. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's more accessible for a broader range of people. I think you see women who are self-purchasing more, which I think is really great, a way to express yourself. You don't have to wait for him to buy you a ring. You're much more a part of the whole process, and you're a part of, future purchases as well.
Just in terms of like the price drop over time, what's it going to take for the price of lab-grown diamonds to get down further, Ankur?
I think the price it's kind of followed Moore's Law. From 2018, there was very little discount. Now it's 75 to 90% off. I think part of that is on the technology side and the supply side. The technology to grow lab-grown diamonds has gotten much better over time. But there's three fundamental components in terms of cost for lab-grown. So one is energy, and it's still a very energy-intensive process. Two is the actual physical hardware and machinery to make diamonds. That has gotten much more efficient. And third is labor. So labor these are still cut and polished by hand. And that tends to be a pretty large portion of the cost. So I think we've kind of hit a plateau, at least in the near term, in pricing. And I think the next shift downwards could take 5 to 10 years, where you could see automated machines cutting and polishing diamonds. At that point, yes, they could further halve from here.
That makes sense. Beth, I'm curious, do you think it's possible, and we've seen some LVMH-owned brands try this, but do you see a market for sort of the luxury lab-grown diamond where like people understand that lab-grown diamonds cost less but are still willing to pay, the $250,000 or whatever?
I do. I think we're going to have to prove it out, but we definitely see very high price points in lab-grown, the same way that you'll see it in natural. I think only time will tell if some of the luxury legacy brands are going to endorse it. I know that they're dipping their toe in.
Yeah.
But I think that there's an appetite on the customer side. And really, it's about recognizable product, iconic. How do you make it very desirable to the end customer? And with lab-grown adoption so high and awareness high and a really openness in the category, I think we will see high price points just the same.
Ankur and Aditi, your business also deals with gemstones, right? And synthetic gemstones exist, but the natural gemstone market has reacted really differently. Tell me why that is, and tell me about that phenomenon.
So one thing I think that's continued after COVID definitely is that people want to go bigger and bolder. And bolder is just not about size, right? It's about color, because it's visually very striking. So we've seen that, almost 25% of our customers, or even in a nationwide survey that we conducted, would replace their diamond with a colored gemstone if they have the opportunity to. And about almost 40% in the nationwide survey again said that they would prefer a 3-carat lab-grown diamond over a 1-carat natural diamond. Mm-hmm. So we see that shift. People could redo their engagement rings, what the preferences would lean towards.
In terms of lab-grown color versus lab-grown diamonds, the reason I think there's a distinction is because color is beautiful because of the imperfections, because of the inclusions. No two color gemstones are the same. And it's almost like people, where the flaws actually make it beautiful. So synthetic, or let's say lab-grown gemstones, tend to be flawless. And the only reason you could tell that they are, in fact, lab-grown is because they are flawless. Where emeralds, rubies, sapphires that you buy, it's just impossible to find them to be truly flawless. Whereas on the diamond side, we've been taught over decades that this idea of a deflawless, that colorless, inclusion-free diamond is what perfection looks like. And whether that's lab or natural, it really doesn't matter in terms of its visual look. That's not the case in color.
And as people embrace their own imperfections, I think there's been a mentality shift. People are embracing their own imperfections, so they're okay having an emerald with a slight flaw in it as well.
Yeah, I also think, it's just a different thing, right? I think people see it as like maybe a little bit more. There are stats about the fact that people picking other gemstones for their engagement rings is on the rise. People just see it as like a little more unique, I think is fair to say. What are the biggest trends you're seeing when it comes to jewelry purchasing around this time? Or like, when you think about romance and jewelry purchasing, I suppose, like what are the biggest market trends you see?
I would say we are seeing, I mentioned diamond tennis necklaces. Those are really popular. We see tennis bracelets very popular. Pearls are popular. Bezel are popular. We see heart-shaped diamonds actually quite popular. We love selling those for Valentine's Day. It's a really nice gift. We just launched this tube collection, which is really cute. And it's really like about a little bit bigger and bolder diamond jewelry, I would say, is getting to be more popular.
So people want to adopt, as the TikTokers call it, mob wife aesthetic a little more.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
What about you all over at Angara?
I think anything personal, anything customizable, nameplates have done really well. Like Beth said, heart-shaped stones, heart-shaped rubies, and even garnets, in those red shades, pink tones. Simple bezel sets that are modern, simple, can be layerable. All those things are beautiful, just not for Valentine's Day, but overall. But we definitely see those red shades definitely being more popular now.
And birthstone is always popular. You can never go wrong to buy her birthstone, I think, for Valentine's Day.
I don't know, man. I feel like I have a crappy birthstone. I'm always like
what do you have?
I'm like aquamarine. Are you serious? Like, give me a ruby.
I like aquamarine.
Yeah, but like, give me a ruby. Like, give me like a.
Can't go wrong with diamond. How about that?
You can't go wrong with diamond. Does anybody on this call have an engagement ring that they wear?
I'm a color girl, so I have a lot of green.
You have a lot of green?
I never take this off. 22 years, I haven't taken this emerald pendant off.
If you could go back, would you change it given how popular lab-grown stones are?
I mean, not this. This is very personal to me. Again, I think any piece is about being personal and speaking to you, but I would definitely wear other lab-grown pieces for sure.
Beth, would you do anything different about your jewelry collection?
I have a natural diamond for my engagement ring that I love. Actually, I lost my previous diamond, and so I was able to choose and have a really nice cushion that I appreciate. And actually, my husband had custom cut my necklace. When we IPO'd, he did it from a lab-created diamond.
That's really cool.
So that's something that's really special to me. But we have a lot of opportunity to upgrade our jewelry box. So that's one of the benefits of being in our position.
Yeah, Ankur's taking notes. I know.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you, Beth, for that.
Yes, I thought I would just add one more thing because you mentioned this shift towards color. So I thought some history on the industry might be a little bit interesting. So from the 1600s to the 1940s, color was actually the majority of the market. So ruby, emerald, sapphire,
Really?
a lot of the semi-precious stones. And then in 1948, De Beers came with A Diamond is Forever. And this idea of 2 months salary for an engagement ring, and this idea of a D flawless being the singular pursuit of perfection. And that shifted the entire industry to 90% diamond engagement rings.
Wow. That's like how Santa used to be green and then Coca-Cola decided he should wear red. That's insane.
And it worked. In both cases, it worked. It's so, I think until, let's say, 2005, that was very much the case. And then we started seeing this resurgence back to color. And I think that what we're likely to see in the next few decades is this shift back to color where it will be the majority of the industry again.
Interesting.
We're already seeing it even outside of, let's say, the jewelry industry. You're seeing it in cars where supercars are increasingly sold.
Really?
In like M&M type colors. 80% of Ferraris were Rosa Corsa a decade ago. Now it's less than 30%. If you look at like a Patek Philippe or Rolex or Audemars Piguet, their most coveted models have a gemstone bezel around. If you look at your iPhone, it's likely to be a color other than black, white, or slate gray.
That's so
that
interesting.
shift is happening in all parts of our society, and it's happening in color as well. So Halle Berry, Kate Middleton are all wearing gemstone engagement rings. That's also precipitating this trend towards
Halle
color.
Berry got engaged again?
A while ago.
Kate Middleton
Yeah.
is from Lady Di. It is not a new
That is true.
purchase.
That is not new for
But
sure.
she did have the option of going diamond, and she went to color. So I think, and even if you look at Victoria Beckham, she has multiple gemstone engagement rings. So we're seeing that shift back just because it's individual creative expression and is no longer as much about financial flex as it used to be.
Interesting. I don't know. As I got engaged 2 years ago, and I have a colored ring, so I'll take it. I believe you as a sample of one. I believe you. Well, this was great. Thank you all so much for taking the time. I feel like this was, it's a world that I feel like you all probably talk about all the time, but I've been telling people about lab-grown stones lately and no one has a clue. So thank you so much.
Thank you as well.
Thank you.